Welcome to our next panel of the day. It's entitled DeFi and the Future of Finance. Now, you all know that blockchain technology has enabled us to create a distributed currency, and DeFi is an attempt to scale that distributed technology up to enable us to build distributed exchanges and marketplaces. The moderator for this panel is Ash Costello. She's a blockchain and privacy lawyer with a background in financial services law and is also general counsel of the Integra Network. She's a member of the expert panel of the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum. Now, most of our guests for this panel are online today. One of our speakers is here in the studio in Vilnius with us. So I'd like to welcome up Vytautas Kašėta, and he is co-founder of SuperHow. They're a blockchain lab in Vilnius. Thank you, sir. Very nice. Please take a seat. And Ash, I'll take moderation over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lewis. And thanks everyone for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here this morning remotely, joining this call on the DeFi and the future of finance. So thank you, Vytautas, for joining us in the auditorium. Online, obviously you have me. You also have Vytautas Karalevičius, apologies, Vytautas, who is the co-founder of SpectoCoin, which is a cryptocurrency exchange. We have Chai Hock Lee from Singapore. He is the CEO of SwitchNovate and a senior blockchain advisor of Tambusi Partners. He has over 2 decades of experience in the financial and technology industry and previously worked in organizations like the Government Technology Agency of Singapore and NTUC Income. Besides being the former and founding president of the Singapore FinTech Association, he's the co-founder of the Global FinTech Institute, the co-chairman of the Blockchain Association of Singapore, and he is also the advisor and board member of numerous organizations and startups. Patrick Wallachek is a blockchain solution expert at IBM. He participated in several projects focused on blockchain technology. He specializes in business analysis and solutions architecture. He has practical experience in delivering theory and hands-on training and workshops in the area of blockchain. He is also a member of the Blockchain and Special Interest Group and a guest lecturer on university courses in Poland. So we have a very august panel this morning. So I'd like to kick off this panel by throwing it open to everyone here, and first of all with the subject of DeFi and regulation. Where do you think this is going to go? Patrick, what about you? Why don't you start us off?
Okay, thank you, Ash. So when it comes to the DeFi and regulation, first of all, we have to be aware of the fact that today most of the regulators are rather observe what is happening in the space of DeFi, because they are they used to regulate the financial institutions which are centralized. They, in my opinion, they do not know how to take an approach in a decentralized finance, because it is happening completely in a different way than it was before. They are not prepared to create the regulations for the decentralized finance because there is no jurisdiction, there are no intermediaries who could be accountable for some problems with the finance. Like, for example, if the source code will be faulty, then who should be responsible for that fact? Should it be developers? Should it be a company who introduced this solution to the decentralized space, or who would be accountable for any faulty source code? Or when the people lose their money, because it's not that easy like in a centralized way where we have some intermediary who should be accountable and they could regulate this financial institution, because in the decentralized space we have no institution who is responsible for managing our money. It's just the smart contracts which has been written in this or another coding language, and then if something is faulty, we've got a serious problem, and no one is going to help people who lost their money because it's probably their fault or fault of the software. So, in my opinion, today most of the regulators all around the world are not prepared to somehow regulate this decentralized market. That they are trying to just copy the standard regulation which already exists in a centralized way into the decentralized, but it's not working like it should be. That's my opinion. So they are now trying to understand this market, but there are not going to be prepared any new regulations anytime soon, in my opinion.
Hock Lee, is the situation the same in Singapore, do you think?
Yeah, sorry, because I was not able to hear clearly. But I think everywhere is the same in terms of regulating DeFi. It is still very unclear, mainly because in DeFi, there is a lack of a central intermediary to impose regulations on, which is what all the existing financial regulation are about, mainly about, which is to regulate a central party. And the Financial Action Task Force tried to do that in their guidance paper in March this year. So they want to classify the developers, those who create or develop or even deploy the DeFi protocols as virtual asset service provider, and to bring to bring DeFi under the ambit of the FATF regulations, with the main focus on anti-money laundering and combating financial terrorist financing. But that is very challenging because even the software developers themselves, they don't have the control of their customer funds. And if you were to look at the current situation, I think the regulation will have to be very, very nuanced. And I think a possible way forward is to regulate those that control the user interfaces, those providers that control the interfaces. Having said that, there are also other ways to interact with the DeFi protocols, not through the user interfaces. So I think the way forward is to really regulate those who are willing, those centralized intermediaries who are willing to play the role to create that UI and connect users to the DeFi protocols. I think the other way out is really through the use of regulatory sandboxes, whereby the DeFi protocols can go into the sandbox for two reasons. One is that it is a way for the regulators to learn about how DeFi actually works and what are the potential impact. And for the software developers, through this means, right, they are able to test out in the real world, in the regulated environment, how DeFi would work. Yeah, so that's my view. Thanks.
I think that's really interesting. And your point there about user interfaces, the regulation of user interfaces, really affects both of our Vaitutuses. If either of you, Vaitutus Karalevicius, would you like to answer that first? Hock Lee's point there about the regulation of interfaces, that particularly affects cryptocurrency exchanges. And as the co-founder of SpectroCoin,
Yes,
what do you
indeed.
think about that?
Yes, indeed. But I think we already have some foundations for regulation of cryptocurrency exchanges, especially from the ML perspective. And like when people are using DeFi, they are still using the virtual currencies. So a lot of foundation for the regulation is there regarding the interfaces, and especially the link between the fiat currencies and real currencies and the cryptocurrencies. So I think from the ML perspective, it's more or less, we have like a foundation and we know where the regulation is directing. But regarding the regulation of DeFi protocols itself, I think we have like two cases down there. But one case is when DeFi is really decentralized, when it's just an open source addition on the blockchain, let's say main now Ethereum, or as well like Cardano and others, but mainly Ethereum. So it just means that like it's an addition on the blockchain, which itself is not regulated like Ethereum, it's just like a protocol Therefore, there's not much possibility for the regulation itself. It just can be a regulation for the gateways, where you, as colleague told, the user interfaces. And then it's going to happen like on that side. It's going to be regarding custody, regarding the AML, regarding identification. On the other hand, there are some DeFis which are not truly DeFis. We are more or less centralized protocols. We're just using the name of DeFi. And then like the regulators might regulate them as the interfaces or as the providers, issuers of tokens. And then the question depends, like, and then I think the only DeFi who are really DeFis will survive, because when you look at the, for example, the success of Bitcoin, it was mainly successful because there was no direct, owner of Bitcoin as a protocol. There was still no direct, let's say, developer, because Satoshi Nakamoto is still somebody being incognito. And I think that's going to be the same for the DeFis. The DeFis will be a bit too centralized, too commercial. The ones who might be regulated and be regulated as exchanges, as interfaces. The DeFis will be just truly open source additions to the existing blockchains like Ethereum and Bitcoin, where will be not regulated because it will be nobody to regulate. There's no headquarters, there's nobody responsible for that. It's just an open source development of technology.
And Vaidutas, would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. The Vytautas view is the quite good, but still, it's quite strange to me to hear this centralized view to the regulations, where I'm since 2015. I'm in this field and looking and seeing this huge growth of recent growth of DeFi protocols. And in this self-regulated market with DAOs and other self-regulation bodies, we can talk just about some sort of recommendations, auditing, or that stuff being applied from the centralized authorities. Because on the one hand, we don't have body, we don't have a centralized service provider to regulate. So what we can come up, it's with standards. We come up with some recommendations for the protocols, and because we are in the peer-to-peer, it's like a personal finance sector, and so up until this moment, it quietly regulates itself quite good, to my view.
And how do you think that will change when central bank digital currencies come along? That will change it from being, a peer-to-peer to being, there'll be a lot more government control when CBDCs come in.
Yeah, CBDCs are really a very good point. That's the I would say it's the missing part of a decentralized economy of DeFi. This because we all have cash here. Cash is all around, and there's one thing that is not tokenized, is not digitized, is the cash itself. So yes, we are missing this, because that's peer-to-peer money. That's sort of it's a long topic actually, but yes, I agree. We need CBDCs in this DeFi market as something really solid for some participants.
And Hock Lee, is that the same in Singapore? What's the attitude towards CBDCs in Singapore?
Yeah, so in Singapore, because Singapore is very small and our existing digital payment system is already super efficient. It's almost zero cost to send money from one to another. But having said that, the regulator, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, has been experimenting with CBDC since 2016. But our focus so far has been focusing on the wholesale CBDC, that means B2B kind of payments. And that experiment actually ended in June last year and has been now commercialized by a few entities, including JP Morgan, DBS Bank, which is one of the largest bank in Asia, and Temasek, which is the sovereign wealth fund of Singapore. Concurrently, MAS now has embarked on the new CBDC project, which is called Project Damba. Interestingly, this is a retail CBDC project, but or more accurately, is a multi-CBDC, because they are creating together with the Bank of International Settlements and a few other central banks a shared utility to be used by all these central bank for facilitating cross-border transfer of multiple CBDC. And my personal view is that CBDC is going to be a game changer for the adoption of blockchain, because it solves one of the uncertainty, which is money, right? Which currently all the stable coins are playing a very big role in making sure there is a vibrant ecosystem. But with the arrival of CBDC, it will give even greater safety of stable coins. I mean, as an alternative to stable coins. So I believe CBDC is going to be a game changer in the adoption of blockchain and digital assets. Thanks.
If I may add.
And sure, of course.
Yeah, because I like the view of the Singapore, where Europe is also experimenting, doing successful experiments with CBDC. European Central Bank has come up with a research paper after recent study, after recent experiment, where Bank of Lithuania also participated and was able to achieve full integration with this payment infrastructure of central bank. So it's just coming. It's a matter of time, and that's very positive.
And the other Vitutus, what do you think?
So actually, on one side, CBDCs in theory could have like an enormous impact for the DeFi and could actually enable like a development and use case in the on the institutional level of DeFi. But on the other hand, I think like CBDCs are not really a DeFi or crypto project. It's more or less innovation on money and kind of trying to compete with the blockchain ecosystem. First of all, it's because CBDCs is more or less just access for the public or mainly like the bigger companies to the ledger of central banks, and like when they would be able to store the digital money in the digital form at the central banks instead of using the financial institutions. So that's like say number one. Another case is actually if CBDCs would be as great as stablecoins, in theory they can. The problem would be about the identification of the end users, and I doubt that the regulators or central banks would be willing to issue the CBDCs in a way that like their holder can be not identified, like now is in with stablecoins, as you can create your own wallet coin. So in that case, I think like it's probably it's not gonna take off in the way you can expect. And then I think that CBDCs will be like in a parallel blockchains or parallel ecosystem in the very regulated, more or less private blockchains, when all the users are identified, and they will like try to replicate the same as is happening on the open blockchain, and anyone who has internet access can use it. You don't necessarily have to you have like a passport or have like a proper identity set it up to use it. So in that case, I think like CBDCs are more like just trying to innovate on money and provide some benefits for the mass adoption. But I don't think they want to take off on the distributed ledgers as stablecoins, just because of the regulation perspective. Because you need everyone to be verified and to be identified who is the holder of the coins. Maybe 20 years ago it would be a different story, but now because taking on all this regulation regarding the AML sanctions and so on, I think no non-government would actually take the step to make it like CBDC without KYC, which would actually stop innovation.
And Patrick, what's your view on this area?
Yeah, I would agree with Vitutas that even if the CBDC would be mass adopted, it will be still some parallel currency to our current stable coins and our current decentralized blockchains, because as far we have, I think, 5 live CBDCs. Most of them are in Latin America. Probably all of them are in Latin America. The rest of these CBDCs are only a pilot stage. Some in Europe, as also Vitutas said that our European Central Bank started the project. The France, Lithuania and Sweden are experimenting with that. There are some pilots in Asia, like for example Singapore and China. But in my opinion, most of these CBDCs which will be created, this will be some kind of centralized currencies. Because yes, that's true. The central banks would have an full control over this currency which will be created. They would not introduce the CBDC without the KYC and AML, which is crucial because they have to identify who is trading the money, who is sending it, and with whom he is making the deals. That's obvious, and that's also true that in our current stable coins and our current cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum, let's be honest, most of the people who are using it, they are rather not willing to go through the KYC and AML. It's not something what the users would like to do. I mean, some of them maybe would agree, but there is a lot of group of people who are rather would stay without the KYC and AML because it fosters the innovation. That's true. It's easier to introduce new products when you are working on some kind of unregulated markets. And also what Chai has said before, we could try to regulate some interfaces, and it works very well when we have these interfaces to regulate, like cryptocurrency exchanges or other intermediaries who are in our interface to the decentralized world. But if we are working on the clear decentralized way, like Bitcoin, like decentralized finance DeFi products, which works on a protocol itself, we cannot regulate it because there are not headquarters, there are no interfaces which could be under the KYC or AML regulation. So that's not so easy to introduce. And also the case of the CBDC, as it is some missing point in our current way in dealing with the cryptocurrencies. We have to ask one very important question: whether or not these CBDCs will be interoperable. Because if it won't be interoperable with the cryptocurrencies, then it will be working like our current digital money are working. So this will be some kind of new digital money, but it will be still controlled by a single institution. So what's the difference between the current digital money and this CBDC when it is not working in a decentralized way?
Yeah, I know. It's just, as you say, the same as the digital money we have now. We already have digital money. CBDCs, is that just putting it onto different blockchains? But Hockley mentioned that CBDCs are going to be a game changer. I think another game changer is gaming, which is going to, introduce, mass adoption, and also NFTs. Those are the two big areas, I think, in addition to CBDCs, where the people, the regular public, have seen a lot of exposure. In particular, NFTs have had a lot of press over the past couple of months. Have you done any work with NFTs, Patrick?
I have no practical experience with NFTs.
Have you bought any?
Yeah, I've been trading some. Let's be honest. I've been trading it, but when it comes to the projects which we have delivered, because as you introduced me, I'm working at IBM, so we are delivering some solutions for our customers. We are working mostly on the Hyperledger Fabric, but it doesn't mean that we are negative to Ethereum or other protocols. We just focused on the Fabric, so we are delivering some projects for our customers. We haven't built, in Poland at least, any project which was focused on a NFT. However, we are now thinking about some using of NFT in, for example, tokenizing the art or other assets. However, when it comes to the NFT and its use in, for example, gaming industry, because gaming industry is really interesting area, because if there is gonna to be introduced something what's called the metaverse, I'm not sure whether it will be true or not. Maybe in a few years we will see the rise of the metaverse. We will have to introduce some currency which will be used there, and I'm quite aware of the fact that if the metaverse will exist, there will be some gaming industry which is not only through some interface, but you are in fact a part of this game in the metaverse, or the part of this universe which will be created. We need some currency which will be exchanged between the users, and I do not believe that it could work in a way that, let's, for example, the Facebook would create some metaverse and Facebook would be in a control of the all currency which will be existing in this metaverse. We need some decentralized way to control the money which will flow through this universe, because it will be completely new way of dealing with the digital assets. So non-fungible tokens and digital currency in decentralized form, like a cryptocurrency, is crucial in order to introduce some metaverse and control the flow of money there.
Yes, and I think some companies have begun. That point you mentioned about interoperability between NFTs, between gaming, between other use cases on different blockchains is key. I know Pocketful of Quarters in the US, they set up a system where they did allow for interoperability of tokens between different games, so that you earn money in one game and you're able to use our tokens in one game, you're able to use it in another game. Lee, have you looked much into NFTs or gaming or any of the I'm going to say the fun side of blockchain?
Yeah, in fact, for the Blockchain Association Singapore, currently we are holding the first ever NFT charity auction, and so far we have raised about 250,000 US dollar, with contribution with one of the local politician. These are our ways of raising awareness of use cases of blockchain. And again, other than DeFi, I think NFT is another game changer for blockchain, because it makes it easier for people to relate to the utility value of blockchain, because previously Bitcoin, Ethereum, people can't, it's virtual to them. They can't really see the utility value. But with NFT, this is something like, for example, a digital art that they can appreciate. And if you look at the development of NFT plus DeFi plus gaming, then you have this kind of blockbuster games like Axie Infinity, which was developed in Vietnam, with most of the users, in fact, 60% of the users are from Philippines. So you can see Vietnam is actually one of the, in fact, is the top blockchain adoption country in 2021. Philippines, another country with rapid blockchain adoption. I saw one of the statistics that 20% of all MetaMask addresses are now coming from Philippines. So combining these two and providing the ability for the players to play to earn a living is taking off very rapidly in this part of the region, and I'm very positive about it. I think games are now changing from being a closed loop system, moving to open loop system. Again, I think this will further accelerate adoption of blockchain and digital assets, at least in Southeast Asia. Thanks.
Yes, I know. I think, as you mentioned, at the Philippines, and I know a lot of gaming companies. You can do crypto farming there, where people earn incomes by gaming. It's phenomenal to see that. That's people's day job. They do gaming, and by making their facilities available, they earn a really good income. Vitutas from SpectroCoin, what do you think? Have you done much with NFTs or with gaming, either of those areas?
We have tried to experiment with NFTs a bit, but I think that's kind of like gaming and NFTs are still like two separate areas. Firstly, about NFTs, I think it's more or less still because you don't keep data on the blockchain itself. It's more or less to keep information about who owns the token itself, the NFT. So still a lot about intellectual property, and I think we will have a lot of cases in the court when it will be established that NFTs kind of proves the ownership or intellectual property of art or of anything else. And I think it's going to be over the next probably 3 or 4 years when we get a proper court law practice in that, and court decisions, and actually you can prove your ownership of something ownership, let's say, of art or of intellectual property of a song or something by holding the NFT. And I think it's going to be the next stage. And then also you can apply the NFTs for gaming, for example. Later on, I think we will have NFTs of in-game items, for guns or so on in different games and so on. But another part, when we talk about the gaming, two aspects. So now we actually decentralizing the finance because we can afford to pay, let's say, $4 per transaction for exchange of a currency, because let's say we're exchanging thousands of dollars, so the cost is like still manageable. But let's say if we would be starting to play games on the blockchain, and we will need that will involve a lot of transactions, and then it will be extremely expensive to do that nowadays. So we still need a lot of improvement in the blockchain itself, and like transactions for us to go much lower and be able to keep to facilitate much more transactions. And then like I think we will have like a lot of gaming. Initially, it will be more or less the gaming what we see as a casino type of gamings, like even card games or just rolling the dice as initial stage. And we will get like move to more complicated games like the say games with like supporting the 3D like Counter-Strike or so on, also moving on blockchain. But what's going to happen probably in the next 10 or 15 years, and then we actually will have like the games called completely decentralized. And that's more or less because all the games are still in the extremely digital universe. And actually we have like all the properties to be decentralized, because there doesn't have to be a proper link between the real world and the game. It's more or less the same with digital currency. While NFTs, we will shall have like some application in the gaming, but still I think another application of NFTs in the medium term would actually be about, does it show or not the property of the ownership of intellectual property? And I think it does, because even when you look at the previous times, the people were looking for a lot of innovative ways how to protect the intellectual property. For example, I heard that in the United Kingdom in the 100 years ago or so on, where, for example, the poets were sending their own poems to themselves by the email. So we have like a post stamp on the envelope, and they can prove that they created this by that day, so nobody can copy that. So I think the NFTs will be used in the same purpose, when actually you can have like a stamp on the blockchain, actually showing the date when you have treated something, or also when you have transferred the property rights to somebody else. And I think that's going to be in the medium term. In the long term, we actually will see much more decentralized gaming, when like the blockchains will be capable to handle it. Just one of them is actually the technological backlog. We'll have like a high internet bandwidth, we have a higher hard drives and so on to support our larger blockchains. On the other hand, it's going to be that the blockchains will improve itself. They will have like, we have staking instead of mining, so the transaction cost will be lower, and also like the blockchains might be more efficient over time. So the gaming will be the next step. It's not going to happen next year or year afterwards. It's going to happen probably in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
I agree. I think gaming, it's getting so fast. And as you say, the blockchains, we're just at the beginning of the blockchain technology. They're getting faster, they're getting more scalable, and also the systems built on top of the blockchains, the various different blockchains, are getting much faster. For example, zero knowledge proofs and that kind of technology, it's come so far in the last 5 years. All the things that link into the blockchain usability and the interfaces getting much faster. I know for the European blockchain, just sticking with NFTs for a minute, I know with the European Blockchain Observatory and Forum, they're producing a report on NFTs at the moment. So I did some of the research for that on NFT use cases, which was fascinating. And I think that is really going to, NFTs are in a DeFi kind of way, actually going to bring adoption. So one company are using NFTs to part finance housing. So if you want to, for example, buy a house, you can fund 49% of your house purchase via NFT. They're using NFTs for crowdsourcing. Another company are using NFTs to purchase space assets. So you can buy a part of, a rocket at NASA. You can buy a tiny NFT of, 1 square inch of a rocket at NASA, and not just NASA, but other space assets. So I think NFTs, because you have that waterfall of ownership with the NFT technology, the smart contract ownership makes that possible. So people are setting up apps to buy and sell NFTs. And we've moved very far away from art and from gaming with NFTs. And now we're just seeing, they're becoming, finance in a way, which is, who saw that coming even 6 months ago? Vitutus, we'll come to you last. Have you done much work with NFTs, or have you
Of
invested in
course.
NFTs? Any interesting ones you want to tell us about? Any interesting drops you've had over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, look, we are blockchain lab. We are experimenting a lot, and NFTs is really one of those most important topics. Actually, we could do a separate panel just about NFTs, and another separate about what we are doing with NFTs. So some people are thinking too slow. It's not 5 years, it's not 10 years, it's this year plus 3 years. We are having now gaming, we are having DeFi, we are having NFTs, everything at once. the point of metaverse was really exact and really good. We are building metaverse currently, right now, as I speak. We need to look at the metaverse, at the building blocks of the metaverse in decentralized way. There will be no one authority no one subject that will start building or will say, look, here is the start of metaverse. That's everywhere. We have some start with the Decentraland. Now we have the Sandbox. We have a lot of VR voxel games. Not only games. We have art projects that are building virtual galleries, and everything is just transforming into this metaverse. On one hand, to the adoption of DeFi. So to my view, and what we have experimented with NFTs, so the gaming, especially the blockchain-related gaming, the play-to-earn gaming will lead to mass adoption of DeFi. That's one major thing. Why? Because currently, if you are using DeFi protocols so heavily like I am, they are understandable only to some sort of geeks or techie guys. And through gaming, using gaming, we are creating the basically user interface to the DeFi markets. We have farming, we have agriculture simulators. Currently, they are going live where you buy a Solana token, you seed Solana token in the field, and you have a nice field of this solar flowers, or you seed another token, you have a forest where you can cut, harvest, earn basically income by staking. And staking, it means you are cultivating something. That's the real mass adoption. That's the gaming. On the other hand, of course, we have the huge gaming industry. Don't know exactly, but that's for sure trillions of dollars. Where by the way, the fun fact, Axie Infinity is around 20 to 30 billion valuation, where Electronic Arts is around 40. So it's here coming. It's near. So and in the nearest 2-3 years, DeFi gaming or blockchain gaming, they will definitely keep up with the market, and in some places maybe overtake the old players. But the old players are also here to stay. If they will adopt the blockchain items, the NFTs that will be representing in-game items, metaverse items that could be brought from one protocol, from one game to another game. We are experimenting inside our lab with crafting one sort of NFTs out of another sort of NFTs. Basically, you bring 3 invaluable NFTs, you burn them in the contract, and you come up with something totally new, like in-game item or even more. To the art topic, we are experimenting as well, like in Singapore, you do with auction. We do this with physical art. Because why? Because NFT is a digital certificate, and basically that's why we are experimenting with real art, with real asset, with tokenization, and bringing to the public, whether as a whale auction or as a shrimp auction for mass adoption. So basically, it's a very exciting topic, and we can continue, go on and on. Thank you.
We can. I know it's fascinating. NFTs, they're fascinating, and I think these two areas are really, I think, two of the most areas that are going to make a big change. What about decentralized lending and decentralized exchanges, the other V2 I know you, SpectroCoin, it does do some of this kind of lending. And I think you have one of the NFT use cases I saw was, lending. You can have there's kind of a pawn shop for NFTs, which I thought was fascinating. You can, put your NFTs in this kind of, you can lend money against your NFTs. That kind of brings me back to, decentralized lending. Is that something you guys have been working at SpectroCoin?
So we more or less work on what is called centralized lending, because we take the crypto assets as collaterals and issue the loans, but still we are using the blockchain for facilitating the transactions. But there are DeFi protocols who are, let's say, competing with us, and like we are doing that on blockchain when you can use one token and get the loan in another token. And also there's for sure this upcoming market, and people will be able to use the NFTs as collateral. But then like the question is actually happening, like who will set the price of an NFT, and then you will need things called oracles who are going to feed the prices in the blockchain regarding the value of crypto. So for example, for cryptocurrencies, for tokens, it's easier because you have actually the market for that, and you can easily price it. Not easily, but at least you can price it, because we have, for example, decentralized exchanges from which you can actually take more or less the value of a token. For NFTs, because all the NFTs are individual, then the price is much more, how to say, depends on the judgment. And then like the question is how it's going to be, how the decentralized protocol is going to determine the value of an NFT. But for sure, in the long term, we're going to see that like initially the centralized exchange, centralized lending products. Later on, the DeFi's will take the NFTs as collateral for the loans. And it's going to be like a big boost for the market. But also before that, we need to see what is actually the value of an NFT. If we have like also like the proper link between the real world implication, such as the intellectual property and NFT, then I think this market will take off a lot, and will be actually a pretty interesting market and pretty interesting development for the future.
I agree. I think NFTs is going to be an industry. It already is an industry in itself. Creating them, the smart contracts to build them, auditing NFTs is going to be something. And then, as you mentioned, they're valuing NFTs. How do you value an NFT? And even though you might have, 10 identical NFTs, but they're not identical, because it's the journey of the NFT which is going to affect the value. And just like art, or just like wine, or just like fancy cars, what is the value of these assets? And the digital asset, one NFT, which is exactly the same as another NFT, will be valued differently based on the journey of that NFT. I think that's the auditing and the all these different aspects of blockchain and of DeFi are their own mini industry in themselves. Hockley, is that something you've looked into at all in Singapore, or any of the organizations you've worked in?
Yeah, in fact, I'm working on the GameFi and Metaverse Lab, launching an accelerator early next year. Because I think what is happening now with blockchain gaming and NFT, which we call GameFi, that is going to lay the foundation for Metaverse. I think Metaverse is fascinating, but it is, I think, at least like 2 to 3 years away. Eventually, the hardware, whether is it the VR headsets, the haptic bodysuits, or even the omnidirection, the treadmill, all this will come down at the very low price point to be integrated with blockchain, with DeFi. So you can almost imagine that your avatar in a metaverse, you have NFT, you can have your jacket as an NFT, which you can stake it because someone else can rent your jacket and pay you interest. So I think I pay you some fees for renting your NFT jacket and then return back to you. This is a form of decentralized finance. So I think financial services in the metaverse is going to be even more interesting. It will go beyond play to earn now. It could even be work to earn. For example, anyone who is disabled in the real life, in the metaverse, he or she is a superhuman. They can be providing customer service in the virtual bank branch in the metaverse, for example. So I think the possibilities are limitless, and it's really up to our imagination. I think in another 3 to 5 years, we can see a lot of this convergence in the various technology. Because to run the metaverse, you need very powerful computing, which is where cloud computing comes in. And you need very powerful AI, where AI technology is rapidly maturing now. And you need blockchain, and you need a lot of other things, which we are seeing all these things are coming together and creating a super exciting future for all of us. Thanks.
I think so. I know I came across some work some people are doing in China in relation. You mentioned their wearables, and I know China is ahead of the game when it comes to wearables. And some of the, in particular, the haute couture, the very expensive clothes, the very expensive handbags, all of that. And those items in the metaverse are more expensive than the actual physical items. Which is fascinating. You can maybe add a zero to the value of something in the metaverse than its physical equivalent. Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about IBM's approach regarding DeFi?
Yes, of course. As I said previously, we are mostly working on the Hyperledger Fabric, so we are building some permissioned blockchain, and we are trying to create some interoperability between these solutions which we are bringing to life. However, in terms of DeFi and IBM's approach, our approach is to navigate our customers into this world. So our customers are mostly the enterprise companies like banks or big financial institutions who are rather not so eager to adopt this technology in terms of a blockchain. I mean, most of the banks are trying to explore what blockchain could bring. There are some projects which are currently live. For example, we have built the solution WeTrade. Maybe you have heard about that. It's a solution which currently involved most of the biggest European banks in order to create a space for medium and small enterprises where you would like to trade with your partner abroad. For example, if we are in Poland, you would like to buy some not so expensive goods from France. Normally, you would have to pay upfront, or you would like to use a letter of credit. But with the use of the WeTrade, now the small and enterprises can make these deals almost instantly via the platform, which is delivered by a biggest European banks, and the banks are guaranteeing that when the producer of goods would send this to the consumer, then he would receive the money as soon as the good would be shipped, and the buyer would approve that everything's fine with these goods. So as I said, we are helping our customers to adopt the solution. We are convinced that there is no way other than trying to go into this decentralized space, because if the traditional financial institutions are not going to adopt some blockchain technology in the decentralized solutions, then they could be overtaken by them really soon. I mean, the DeFi market is inevitably growing, and it's going to be bigger and bigger. And even today, when we are talking about the drawbacks of this of these blockchain solutions, the first thing that everyone is arising is the performance. But performance in terms of a transaction per second is not a good measure. We should rather try to measure not the transaction speed, but rather the transaction value. And if we would take the transaction value, then the Bitcoin has something around 190K of US dollars per transaction, compared to a Visa, which is something like 100, and MasterCard is something like 70K of US dollars per transaction, which clearly shows that the value of money or value of assets which are transferred through the decentralized protocols is much higher than in a traditional way. It's really fascinating, and all the financial institutions centralized today have to think about this and try to adopt this solution, or they would be overbeaten or overtaken by the companies which back a few years ago, were rather not taken seriously by banks. So our approach is to help the banks and other institutions to explore this space and try to bring as much as possible of new solutions, but not only by trying to digitize the current processes, but to digitize and decentralize it.
Hakli, what would you say consumers should be aware of? Just last question. What do you think consumers should be aware of, and what should individuals take care to protect against?
I think at this point in time, DeFi is not suitable for the majority of the retail consumers for various reasons. First and foremost, right, there is this asset risk because crypto is already volatile, but cryptos in DeFi protocol is even more volatile because for a simple reason, some of the DeFi protocol are quite small in size. So the liquidity is actually much more lower than centralized exchanges. So the price movement can even be larger. Second thing, of course, this is largely unregulated space now. There are a lot of scams and rug pulls. Other than that, we often hear about all these kind of technology risks, such as the smart contract vulnerability, which has caused quite a number of DeFi protocol a lot of money being drained away because of the flaws in their smart contract code. And then, of course, like with majority of the DeFi protocol built on top of the Ethereum blockchain, which is at this point still not scalable, it very frequent there is congestion, and at some point in time, right, it might cause a lot of risk in terms of like it's not being able to settle on time. Other than that, we have talked a lot about compliance risk because currently there's a lack of an intermediate for you to regulate. And then, of course, this resulted in a lot of regulatory and legal uncertainty, which will discourage institutions to come into this space. Last but not least is really the governance risk because how do you manage the super admin key, the private key management? How do you transit from centralized governance to decentralized governance? So at this point, it is really not suitable for retail consumers, except those very sophisticated. They know what they are getting into, which is why I think in the medium to longer run, regulations will be key to for further growth of this particular sector. Thanks.
Thank you. And Vitutus, what do you guys at SpectraCoin think is a risk that consumers should be aware of?
So actually, still like the blockchain, all the blockchain protocols are still in experiment phase. So there can also be like errors left in the code, or there can also be like attacks on the blockchain or many other things. So we have to look at it as an experiment, and we should participate in that to learn about it. But it should not be that we should like put like all the let's say assets on it or so on. So one of the things is actually to be sure like number one is still not regulated. So if there's an error, there's no way back. Another way we have to be sure like still an experiment, it's a new experiment. So we always have to take it as an opportunity to learn, but not as take it as like as something very solid and something what we can trust completely. Because the point is like the beauty of the DeFi blockchain and so on is that like it's all mathematics and based, so all the rules are pressed up and like nobody can question them. But also the point is because we haven't used them for too long, there might be some things which are in the code where nobody has exploited yet, but somebody might exploit in the future, and the consumers should be aware about it. But still, it's something very new, and still it's not like something that has been used for decades. Then you can rely on it completely. So we always should see it as an experiment. We should participate in that and see where future is holding it. We should not take it as something like institutional or just warfare, as banks who are existing for hundreds of years.
Thank you. And finally, Vitutus, back to the auditorium, and the same question for you. What do you think consumers should try and protect against and be aware of?
Yeah, at SuperHow we have some institutional clients and corporate clients that are bringing hybrid finance into the markets, and what we see from this innovation, from this activity, that the key storage is the one of the key factors, while also education is also a must. We need to educate our clients, our users. We need to set up self-education environment for them, and basically the key storage, the keys are very important. Talking in person storage of the keys in devices, hardware devices, and the corporate storage of the user keys, if that's hybrid finance as well. So you need some really decent key storage solutions, custody solutions, and of course audits. You need to audit everything 2, 3, 5 times, whatever it takes, because the writing the DeFi code, smart contract code is tough.
Yes, I think so. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. The auditing, with the best will in the world, there already has been a few mistakes happen with smart contracts. So I think that's something that the auditors, I know Zokio do a lot of work in this area. I think it's all the auditing of smart contracts from NFTs, from DeFi, from the various different types of things is going to be a huge area as we go forward. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their time this morning, Vitutas and the other Vitutas, Hawk Lee and Patrick, and
Thank you.
and me also, thank you. And I'll hand you back to Lewis.
Ash, you're there. Thank you very much for running a very informative session there. Just before we go, I want to grab some of your thoughts, Ash, because we've been hearing so much from everyone else. But I mean, the factor that comes through everyone's talks today is, when is the government regulation coming, and how will it look, and how will this affect the fundamental parts of it? Give us your thoughts. Is government regulation good in the end, and do you think it will just overtake everything, or will there always be let's say, a dark sector off to one side?
I think they're doing their best to catch up with that dark sector. And I think the dark sector gets more press than the fact that it is highly regulated already. In Europe, you have MiFID, and you've got companies like Black Manta, which are working within MiFID. They're a tokenization platform. They're based in Germany and a few other countries. You have a new regulation coming in called MiCA, which will, it's being designed specifically for crypto assets, the market in crypto assets. And that is something that already you have AIFMD for investment funds, MiFID for, probably the Vitutuses would probably hate the sound of MiFID. I'm sure they're regulated by that already. I know Singapore has been looking at a lot of regulation, and the Middle East has done a lot of regulation. The SEC, I mean, they can't stop. I mean, they're all over the place with, enforcement, not so much regulation, but enforcement. And so I think it, because of the investor protection, and it is finance. Financial services is already very, very, very highly regulated. So you have platforms like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which got stolen March. They're kind of too big now to be regulated, but the SEC put out something recently to say they're coming after everybody else. And there have been a few very high-profile cases, for example, Kin and Ripple in the US. So we're never going to get away from regulation in the financial services space. Keeps people like me busy, the lawyers. I'm not going to complain.
Good for you. Business is looking good for you. Okay, Ash, thank you very much for your moderation today. Gentlemen, thank you for being on the panel, and thank you for everyone watching. We'll see you in the next session.